Veteran of countless storms, Calypso knows the fury of the wind. For 35 years, she has battled the ominous force of the gales that sweep the sea. There have been moments of peril. Safety lines fired to men caught in hurricanes. Life rafts launched as wind-driven waves attack. For Captain Jacques Cousteau, the contest with the wind spans 55 years at sea, through blusters and squalls, monsoons and polar blizzards. Like seafarers across the ages, Cousteau and his crew contend with a ferocious power, personified by the Greeks as Aeolus, god of the wind, who played with the destinies of men on the high sea. Cousteau has long dreamed of turning the ancient enemy into an ally. At the edge of the Sahara, his team has used sailcraft across the desert, then dived to observe ocean creatures. Cousteau and son Philippe studied seabirds from a sailboat, but now Cousteau would abandon the traditional sail of canvas for a strange new sail formed of metal. Studying their invention, Cousteau and aerodynamics professor Lucien Malavard find the peculiar device far superior to conventional sails. Along the coast of France, they ready a new breed of wind ship. Cousteau sets out not to chart the world beneath the sea, but to change the way we journey across it. In the ageless quest across the surface of the sea, human imagination has fashioned vessels propelled by oars, by wind, by steam and oil, by nuclear fire. Today, a new kind of vessel is about to be tested, a sailboat bearing an unlikely sail. The celebration marks a special departure from the Moroccan port of Tangier. Once ships sailed from this ancient harbor, bound for Phoenicia, Carthage, Byzantium. Today, a crew led by Captain Jacques Cousteau sets sail from Tangier across the Atlantic to New York. And the sail they set, the only means of power they intend to use, is a tubular column bearing resemblance not to a mainsail, but to a moving lighthouse. October the 12th, 1983. The dream suddenly fades into a moment of truth. For the Cousteau team, the 4,000-mile mission is the supreme sea trial of their invention. Cousteau has acquired a second-hand catamaran as a test platform and mounted amidship the device he calls a turbo sail. The towering cylinder that propels the windship needs to be orientated like a canvas sail to obtain the maximum thrust. But instead of pulling ropes and turning capstans, Cousteau does the job from the cockpit by simply pushing buttons. To prove the potential of the turbo sail, Cousteau has ordered the ship's engines sealed for the trip. The theory will now be put through every test at sea, with performance data logged by computer. In calling his experimental ship Moulin à Vent, the windmill, Cousteau has amused the crew. It is appropriate. It's also the name of his favorite wine. Perforated strips extend vertically along both sides of the turbo sail. The uncovered windward strip allows the fan on top of the hollow cylinder to suck in the air flowing along the structure. When the fan is not in action, the wind flow separates from the rear of the profile and creates eddies, as shown in a fluid simulation tank. Even so, the cylinder is about twice as efficient as a canvas sail. But when the fan is set in motion, the airstream is forced to hug the surface. The turbulence is suppressed, and the area subject to thrust is greatly increased. The turbo sail becomes 5 to 6 times more efficient than ordinary sail. Aboard an unusual vessel, the crew now assume some unconventional roles. Bertrand Charrier, the turbo sail's co-inventor with Malavar and Cousteau, is ship's gardener, will raise in a diminutive greenhouse fresh tomatoes, lettuce, cucumbers, radishes, rare commodities in the middle of the Atlantic.
After years of anticipation, the departure of our new windship heightened the spirits of the crew. The system appears to respond well to the wind, catching the breeze and racing on it swiftly. At sea now, we turn to the life we know so well. The team soon establishes on this new vessel the warmth and music so long a tradition on Calypso. Today, a little brown bird flutters onto our deck. Little bird, you don't belong here. The nearest land is 800 miles away. This is the realm of seagulls. Surely a storm swept him away from his home among the trees. Confused, seeking shelter, the little vagabond hopped below deck through a hatch. I found him sitting near the starboard garden. He chirped weakly, but soon fell silent. I hoped he would become our friend and he would adopt our ship as his home, but he refused to eat or to drink, and I knew he had little chance to survive. We named him Zephyr because he was as gentle as a breeze, with his feathers puffed up. Zephyr looked like a fragile living bubble. He appeared exhausted after his endless, tormenting flight. Yet, when I whistled, he turned and looked at me with growing trust. During the night, he rested close to me in my sleeping bag. The next morning, I set him carefully in the garden, and I went to the bridge. But our unexpected mascot was too weak and distressed in this alien world. 2 hours later, my little friend Zephyr had given up living.
For 2 weeks, the winds remained calm, the team frustrated, the ship brought to a near standstill. But in the 3rd week, on a chill morning, the sea begins to rise. By mid-morning, the wind and surging waves wrench the vessel in shifting fury. That afternoon, the first hint of danger appears. At the base of the turbo sail, Cousteau discovers a crack developing. Welded to a rotating platform, the tall cylinder is being loosened as the catamaran's double hull pounds into the choppy waves. Inspecting the problem, Charrier realizes the potential. The entire turbo sail could be severed to plummet into the sea. We must do something, Cousteau says, and quickly, adds Charrier. The young engineer proposes that they attempt to stay the turbo sail with shrouds anchored inside the cylinder. Working all night, they stretch steel cables to gird the shaft from within. Now in mid-Atlantic, they have no choice but to sail on. A damaged mast braced internally by steel wires, Moulin à Vent proceeds under mild weather for days without incident. Though wounded, the turbo sail propels the ship easily, and gradually thoughts aboard turn to more domestic concerns. The first harvest from the ship's garden, now a month old. Though the results are not formidable, Cousteau has ordered the tiny window garden as a steady reminder of the bountiful energy that runs the windship. It is solar power that fuels the wind and feeds the tomato. The makings of a modest salad are offered to Bertrand Sion, who doubles as diver and chef. Sion is not very impressed by the harvest and carries on preparing omelette.
Ça fume. Regardez, ça fume. C'est les légumes du jardin? Non, non.
Cousteau insists on serving his crew, which numbers 6, as he does his family at home. Each has been picked as a specialist and as a friend. Mechanic Talon, engineer Charrier, diver Sion, Breslin, cameraman and diver, Guy Jouas, radio officer and sound engineer. So the days pass, with only sporadic winds to ride, with thoughts straying from the dangerous condition of the cylinder. In the long, empty evenings, there is little to do but seek distraction in daydreams, or poetry, or playing cards.
Nous avons rêvé jusqu'au bout le lait d'un nom ou d'une tente. Rien ne vient. Notre cerveau bout dans l'idéal, feu qui nous tente et nous mourons. Reste debout ceux qui font le tour de la rampe. Et dites, le plan est timbre, hein?
Oh, encore, on finit, commandant.
Ouais, bon.
Though all share the same sleeping quarters, each follows his own ritual for retiring. Jouas, the team's relentless comic, has carried aboard his hammock.
C'est sportif, hein?
Beneath him, Talon faces a perilous night.
Il me descend pas sur le ventre.
All nights do not end in peace. Now, buffeting winds and waves from a thunderstorm give rise to concern. During the night, Cousteau has changed course in anticipation, heads now for shelter, tiny Salvage Island, and dispatches a Zodiac to find suitable anchorage. Here, storm-driven swells heave into fierce waves as they meet the natural barricade of the reefs surrounding Salvage, simultaneously producing a merciless undertow and blocking the windship from reaching the island. In the little Zodiac, searching for a passageway to calm waters, Charrier and Sillon are treated to a spectacular and unnerving view of their ship, while they find themselves on an unexpected roller coaster ride. The fringing reefs of Salvage Island do not offer an easy corridor to safety. Maneuvering cautiously, the team reaches, on the leeward side of the island, a small cove affording shelter, and lays anchor in 30 feet of water.
Allez, mouille!
An uninhabited, desolate sliver of land, Salvage Island has long proved a menace to Atlantic shipping. Seeking refuge or passing too near, vessels easily founder on its treacherous, hidden reefs. Surveying the island, Sillon finds debris from broken ships littering the shore, and the rusting carcass of a freighter wedged among the rocks in the shallow. For the Cousteau team, the temporary detour presents the first opportunity for an excursion into the tranquil world beneath the windswept Atlantic. Captain Cousteau will lead a brief dive to examine the surrounding symmetry of ships. The dive provides a moment of diversion, but Cousteau is plagued by a growing worry. Slack wind and delays have prolonged the voyage. The ship could be caught in the storm season, fast approaching. The team decide to sail without delay, racing ahead at 9 knots under steady wind. The turbo sail is proving more powerful than the team had hoped. Yet, though it shows no sign of weakness, Cousteau remains wary of the hasty repair. Passing the halfway point of the journey, Cousteau radios son Jean-Michel aboard Calypso, which speeds now to rendezvous with the Windship, bringing welding equipment for more substantial repairs to the turbo sail. The charts reveal that the two vessels are now only a day apart. Inspired by the approach of old friends, the team lightheartedly indulges in a burlesque of their plight beneath a shaky turbo sail. As the two teams, and father and son, are reunited, they are watched from afar by Simone Cousteau, who prefers faithful Calypso to her husband's strange new ship. The plan is to prevent further jeopardy to the mission and to the turbo sail by making repairs while underway at sea, thereby saving precious time. To avoid continuous maneuvering, Calypso secures the smaller ship behind her with tow lines. That accomplished, a tank of argon gas is transferred to Moulin à Vent, along with a special gun to weld aluminum. Lacking enough electricity for the welding operation, the Windship must also haul in electric lines from Calypso. Calypso engineer Paul Martin does his best to strengthen the welding seams despite the ship's constant swaying motion. Though heartened by the repair, Cousteau is aware that 34 days have passed, longer than planned, and he knows that in mid-November, Atlantic storms are frequent and often furious. On November the 14th, now entering the last leg of the crossing, the Windship heads again towards deteriorating weather. Checking the forecast, Cousteau, Charrier and Jouas find somber news. A severe storm front is approaching, leaving them but 1 or 2 days of grace.
In the meanwhile, there is an opportunity to test the full potential of the reinforced turbosail on the strong winds that herald the storm. Around us, the sea is furrowed by 15-foot swells. Though it vibrates under the furor of 45-knot winds, the turbosail carries us forward at 11 knots, faster than Calypso. I feel caught up in a playful race on the high seas, like the sailing regattas I steered in my youth. Wave by wave, we overtake Calypso. Even with our unwieldy hull, we seem to suffer less than she does. When we finally pull ahead, I find myself shouting into the wind like a child, savoring success after years of hard teamwork. I leave the bridge enthusiastic but exhausted. The winds and seas are still swelling, and the situation is becoming serious. In our little shelter, we are buffeted about. Dinner becomes a balancing act as the hull crashes against the rising waves. We have opened a bottle of Moulin à Vent for luck. In the lurching boat, it must be handled and stowed as carefully as a bomb. Few words are exchanged. The atmosphere is filled with anxiety.
Within hours, the nightmare begins. Charrier has heard a distressing sound and now finds alarming leaks. And inside the cylinder, a bitter disappointment. The new weldings have split. They are now worthless. Talon stretches another steel web, but they'll face the fiercest storm of the voyage with a disabled mast. That night, gale force winds arrive, exceeding 60 knots. At dawn, Cousteau calls nearby Calypso. Although they are now only 2 days from New York, he tells a grim story. As you can see, last night the mast was lost. It happened during my watch. At 2:45 we heard the steel cables snap like violin strings. I knew immediately that the mast was about to topple over and quickly turned the wheel to pay off and run with the wind so that the mast would fall towards the bow, which it soon did. Had it fallen backwards, those of us at the stern might have been killed, but it fell forward into the dark and disappeared, sinking at once. It carried our radio and satellite communications with it, but otherwise we have sustained no damage. All aboard are safe. The only thing we have lost, Cousteau tells his son, is hardware. Our morale remains high. We will do it again. Alcyone. Cousteau names his second windship after the second daughter of the wind god Aeolus. Outfitted with 2 cylinders, she leaves La Rochelle, France for New York. Less than 18 months after Moulin à Vent's accident, Alcyone has been planned, designed, built, tested, and dispatched to attempt a second transatlantic crossing. The awkward catamaran hull that jolted loose the first turbo sail is replaced by a single slender bow to slice the waves and a double-hulled stern for stability. With veteran sailor Bernard de Guy in command, Alcyone is born of Cousteau's determination to refine the team's original invention and to build a ship of the future. On the bridge, as Cousteau tests manual controls to trim the turbo sails and position the flaps, data from dozens of sensors is displayed on a computer monitor. Below deck, Alcyone's automation engineer, Denis Chalvet, programs the ship's master computer. For this voyage, Cousteau has decided not to seal Alcyone's engines, but to test the combination of wind and motor power. When Cousteau pushes a button, all the adjustments of turbo sails and engines are made automatically in order to maintain a constant cruising speed of 10 knots, while ensuring a maximum saving of fuel. Alcyone is for Cousteau both a sailing delight and a serious technological breakthrough. Day after day, with or without wind, she covers more than 200 nautical miles, while the crew of 12 enjoy the comfort of spacious quarters, determined to remain busy on a vessel that is so automated. Cousteau says it could make the trip without us. Chef Sion commands a more elegant galley this time, with microwave, trash compactor, ice maker, with room to make lemon tarts, and without the bother of garden or gardeners. Running at a constant speed, Alcyone quickly makes Goat Island in the Azores, passes through the narrow channel that divides the island, and heads into the open Atlantic. As she sails, Alcyone becomes an international broadcasting station, reaching an audience of millions. Every day, Cousteau is interviewed from Paris by the Europe #1 radio, conveying news of the voyage throughout Europe.
I'm Lane King, on board the Windship.
He also is invited aboard American journalist Len King, who reports daily to the United States over CNN News in Atlanta.
At night, a sheen from the full moon.
Moscow.
And Russian journalist Vladimir Krivachev, who dispatches news to the Soviet Union via Radio Moscow, spelling Sargasso to a perplexed editor.
The legendary Sargasso Sea, an immense tract of the mid-Atlantic named for its patches of sargassum weed. Alcyone slows down for a dive. Présin and Sion, joined by biologist Dr. Richard Murphy, will observe a once mysterious realm. In the lore of early seamen, ships were said to perish here, in a great entangling mass of seaweeds. Far too sparse to interfere with passing vessels, the brown algae drift across an area as vast as the United States. The little living flotillas are caught in an immense whirlpool of currents, rotating in the tropical Atlantic. Amid these floating prairies, a unique collection of small creatures finds shelter. One, the tiny sargassum fish, with his shaggy body, is perfectly camouflaged to hide in his miniature jungle. Though in Dick Murphy's hand he appears helpless, he is in fact a ferocious hunter, dashing out to swallow passing tiny plankton creatures, then disappearing back into his sargassum hideaway. In the disorienting emptiness of the open sea, any drifting object becomes a moving oasis, sheltering a community of undersea gypsies. though surely confused by the strange bubble-making monster with two tails. The triggerfish is reluctant to wander far from the only security he knows. Each day, while the Winship presses on toward New York, our divers can linger to play with fish. Alcyone is not obliged to wait. Her design allows the divers to catch up later and slip easily aboard.
Miles east of Cape Hatteras, a stiff westerly wind gives Alcyone a chance to demonstrate her capability.
Gradually, the evidence becomes conclusive as we catalog the data on Alcyone's computer. Under a 27-knot wind, we can maintain a constant speed of 11 knots, even faster than we hoped. Most importantly, our engines are burning only about half the diesel oil they would consume without the help of turbosails. Alcyone's achievement means that future ships can drastically reduce their consumption of precious fuels and their pollution of air and sea. We decide to toast our success with a bottle of vintage wine. Outside, the ship is bathed in salt spray, while I stand comfortably inside before an array of advanced instruments. On other sailboats, several of us would be working on the deck now, drenched and cold as we fought the sails. With turbosails, the arduous job is turned over to the computer.
100 miles east of New York, Calypso's helicopter goes aloft to greet Alcyone in only her third week at sea. Circling the Winship, pilot Bob Brownbeck finds that he's not the first to arrive in welcome. Below, like a reception committee, fin-backed whales joined by a pack of dolphins cavort alongside Alcyone. To the exuberant team, though aware the great creatures are leaping to gulp tons of plankton, or fish, the feeding behavior seems irresistibly like an expression of their own joy, like a small tribute from fellow ocean voyagers. Now Calypso arrives also to bid welcome and to accompany the little ship across the final mile. At dawn, on a still June morning, Alcyone passes beneath the Verrazzano Narrows Bridge and into New York Harbor. Between La Rochelle, France, and their long-sought docking in Manhattan, there now remains only 4 miles of euphoria. At last, the long years of persistence and faith give way to exultation. Alcyone is surrounded by a fleet of escorts, treated to a jubilant welcome by the city of New York. From Calypso and small craft alongside, a handful of old friends and supporters are transferred aboard Alcyone for the arrival. Ahead, Alcyone's team will face questions from supporters and veteran sailors like Ted Turner, from reporters, from business executives. Finally, as old and new pull side by side, the turbo sail's three inventors, Malavart, Cousteau, Charrier, share a moment of elation and pride. Appropriately, the Windship now pulls into a berth at Manhattan's South Street Seaport, the oldest wharf in New York, once a destination of the great tall ships, of barks and brigantines and tea clippers. Today, surrounded by applause and music, the Cousteau team docks in the shadows of sailing history, a curious new sailboat they hope will inaugurate a new age of sail.
Of New York, he is Admiral Cousteau. Step up, Admiral. Come, sir. City of New York, we hereby present this certificate of appreciation to Admiral Jacques-Yves Cousteau.
The team is exalted in proclamation, honored with a key to the city, embraced as pioneers. So ends the maiden voyage of Alcyone, amid a sea of celebrants and under a storm of balloons that hang like ornaments on the winds of Io. The little Portuguese man of war, a floating colony of specialized animals, was setting its air-filled sail to ride the sea winds long before man first fashioned sails of papyrus. Cousteau believes the time is at hand to reinvent the ancient sail, to capture an abundant and free source of propulsion more efficiently. His team now draws up plans for large merchant ships powered by turbo sails. And for Alcyone, the demonstrations are over. Commissioned as a roving platform for diving and science, she enables the Cousteau team to expand its efforts to probe the undersea world.
From an investigation of the powers of the wind, our teams now return to the realm we have studied fervently for more than 4 decades. We begin a program as ambitious as any we have undertaken, a 5-year expedition around the world using both Calypso and her new little sister Alcyone. Today, in the vast museum of the sea, we touch the encrusted bones of ships used by the explorers of antiquity. Yet, while the shards of another age are preserved by the embracing sea, the world above them has undergone monumental change. Our goal is to rediscover the water planet we think we know, to mark the changes, to imagine its futures, and to delve into its enduring mysteries and wonders. The world we now re-explore must sustain generations to come on limited resources. We must reinvent our machines, our lives, combine the best of the past and the future as Alcyone does, driven by the ancient twins of Aeolus, yet directed by computers as precise as the instincts of a sea bird.